Hello and welcome. I'm Thomas Porteous and you're watching the World Report on NewsX World. Let's take a look at some of the top headlines of the hour. President Donald Trump says he has signed a bill requiring the release of government documents on Jeffrey Epstein. Trump, who had earlier opposed the measure, announces on Truth Social that he has just signed the bill. Senior Pentagon officials led by Army Secretary Dan Briscoe arrive in Kyiv to meet President Zelensky and discuss efforts to end the war with Russia. The visit comes as reports emerge of a new peace plan and after a Russian strike kills 26 people. Ukraine says at least 26 are dead and dozens are injured and missing after a Russian drone and missile strike hit apartment blocks in Ternopil. Officials say nearly 100 are injured as Russia launches hundreds of drones and missiles damaging energy and transport sites. Saudi Crown Prince Mohammed bin Salman meets members of Congress in Washington as he promotes deepening economic and security ties with the United States. The visit follows a lavish White House welcome from President Trump, who again defends him over the 2018 Khashoggi killing. Hamas condemns new Israeli airstrikes in Gaza as a dangerous escalation, warning they threaten an already fragile ceasefire. Israel says the strikes respond to a Hamas violation, while medics report at least 25 people killed in the latest attacks. Sudan's army chief Abdel Fattah al-Burhan says his council is ready to work with the United States and Saudi Arabia to help end the conflict. The statement thanks regional mediators and follows President Trump's pledge to coordinate efforts with Gulf states to stop the fighting. The Israeli military says Hezbollah is violating a ceasefire by rebuilding operations in southern Lebanon near the Israeli border. It says dozens of sites, including headquarters and weapons stores in civilian homes, have been identified around the village of Beit Lif. Australia says a compromise deal will make Turkey the host of next year's COP31 summit, while Canberra leads the government negotiations. The agreement ends a long standoff between the two countries after both refused to withdraw their bids. Now, our top story of the hour comes from the United States, and President Donald Trump says he has signed a bill requiring his administration to release government-held documents related to the late convicted sex offender Jeffrey Epstein. Trump, who had initially opposed the measure, reversed course as the legislation gained momentum in Congress. He announced the signing on his Truth Social platform, declaring he had just signed the bill to release the Epstein files. The move follows comments from U.S. Attorney General Pam Bondi, who vowed maximum transparency after both chambers of Congress, now under Republican control, voted to mandate the release. Bondi confirmed the Justice Department will publish its Epstein-related materials within 30 days, as the law requires. The release is expected to shed new light on Epstein's activities before and after his 2008 conviction. The case has lingered over Trump politically, fueled in part by conspiracy theories he has echoed to supporters and by lingering public skepticism surrounding Epstein's 2019 jailhouse death, officially ruled a suicide. Let's listen in to U.S. Attorney General Pam Bondi.
What are you doing here over the next 30 days as we understand it?
We will continue to follow the law with maximum transparency while protecting victims.
When you say follow the law, Madam Attorney General, do you mean that you will provide all the files by 30 days?
We will follow the law. The law passed both chambers last evening. It has not yet been signed, but we will continue to follow the law, again, while protecting victims, but also providing maximum transparency.
We're now joined by Matthew Verdum. He's an American journalist and he joins us live from Washington, D.C. Matthew, thank you very much for joining us here on the program. Of course, a significant moment in Donald Trump's second administration. This case has lingered over him for months now. Attorney General Pam Bondi has vowed full transparency when it comes to the release of these files. Do you think that we'll get that?
I think so, except that the law that was passed and that President Trump apparently just signed into law a few hours ago allows exceptions, allows for certain information to be redacted or blacked out, left out of the record. Stuff regarding that would jeopardize current government operations, like in the intelligence community, or that would have an impact on open investigations, and that may include some of the people who are actually mentioned in the Epstein files. And we're still not really sure what is in those files, but I guess we're going to find out in the next 30 days. But the President Trump had initially opposed the bill to require the disclosure of the Epstein files, but then he saw which way the wind was blowing, and he got behind it, and it passed Congress almost unanimously, and now he signed it into law.
Yes, and Matthew, of course, Donald Trump's bill signing ceremony is usually filled with pomp. This, however, not so much. Truth Social was released. What do you make of that? Matthew, can you hear?
Probably a strategic reason that he had that he signed the document behind doors without conducting an elaborate televised live signing ceremony. Perhaps because he's embarrassed that he opposed the legislation for so long, and then was forced politically to do an about face and endorse it. So I suspect he doesn't want to make a big deal out of it. Maybe he is expecting that his Attorney General, Pam Bondi, is going to be quite aggressive in redacting information and not releasing it to the public. So he doesn't want to build up, I'm just guessing, doesn't want to build up expectations among the public about what they're going to find out. So, there's all sorts of reasons why he wouldn't have a signing ceremony. If he wanted to, there's no reason why he had to sign the law, within hours of its final approval. He could have held it off for a day or two and had a big signing ceremony with, TV cameras and everything in the Oval Office, but he chose not to do that. And my guess is that he's kind of embarrassed by the whole thing and just wishes it would go away. And so he didn't want to do a victory lap and celebrate the signing of the legislation.
Of course.
If that makes any sense.
Yes. And of course, Matthew, this has been a bipartisan issue. Americans from both the left and the right have wanted the release of these files. Some strong opposition from Donald Trump's MAGA base in regards to this, some of which have said that they've lost trust in the Trump administration for not releasing these files earlier. Do you think that those MAGA supporters are lost for good, or do you think he can regain back that trust in his core supporters?
I think that some of them are lost for good. I think that most of them are probably not lost for good. And that as long as there is a steady stream of information from these so-called Epstein files, most people will, except for the most aggressive conspiracy theorists, they're probably going to be satisfied. But there's a segment, and I don't know what percentage of those people are not going to be satisfied by this. They feel betrayed because he campaigned on greater government transparency, on releasing these Epstein files, and then he's turned his back for a long time on that campaign promise, and only, in recent days came to support the legislation mandating the release of the files. So with some people, that trust is going to be lost forever, but I suspect that that's going to be a minority of his so-called mega supporters.
Yeah, and Matthew, some skeptics of this say that Donald Trump is going to find a way around redacting certain information, whether that be ongoing investigations, other alleyways, etc. Is there a possibility that Donald Trump will use some of these loopholes in order to redact some of this information that are in these files?
I don't think Donald Trump is making the decisions here. It's Pam Bondi, but you know, she is an arm of his administration, and if they're, I can't really say. I don't know if she's going to adhere to the spirit of the law and release, you know, almost everything quickly, or if she's going to make it, or if she's going to be reluctant to release certain information. She does have some discretion, as I said earlier, in that information that could be potentially harmful to the intelligence community or to open investigations that that the FBI or other agencies may be conducting may be withheld. So I'd like to think that she's going to approach this in a straightforward, honest way. I really can't say how she's going to handle it, but I can understand why some people would be suspicious of her and of President Trump at this point.
Yes, Matthew, do stay with us as we have further stories to discuss. But next, we turn to Europe, and Ukrainian Interior Minister Ihor Klimenko has said that at least 26 people have been killed and nearly 100 people have been injured in an overnight Russian drone and missile attack on the western Ukrainian city of Ternopil. Russia reportedly fired 476 drones and 48 missiles at Ukraine, striking energy and transport infrastructure and forcing emergency power cuts in a number of regions in frigid temperatures. Meanwhile, Russian Foreign Ministry spokeswoman Maria Zakharova has compared what she called the West's destruction of Ukraine to Hitler's plans annihilating the Slavs. Meanwhile, a Russian diplomat has stated that Russia is ready for the resumption of a dialogue with the United States regarding the nuclear arms reduction if appropriate conditions are prepared. Joining us once again is Matthew Verdum. Matthew, a huge strike on Ukraine, 26 people dead, 476 drones and 50 missiles in one night. What does that tell you about Russia's stockpile, production, their ongoing offensive into Ukrainian territory?
Well, Russia still wants to win this war against Ukraine, and I don't think Putin has been deterred, even though support from the United States has been kind of spotty at times. The United States is still supplying resources to Ukraine, and I really don't think Vladimir Putin is deterred by any of this, because he thinks Ukraine should be Russian sovereign territory, and he's not going to stop. He's not satisfied with getting the eastern part of Ukraine and getting access to Ukraine's ports, and he wants to finish the war off. Western support, particularly support from the United States, is preventing Russia from having a quick victory over Ukraine. But you know, I don't see any indication that Putin's will to prevail over Ukraine is dissipating at the moment.
Okay, Matthew Verdum, thank you very much for joining us here on NewsX World. It's a pleasure to have you here on the programme. We now move on over to the Middle East, where in Gaza, at least 27 people were killed yesterday in one of the deadliest days since the fragile ceasefire took effect last month. Gaza's civil defense agency, operating under Hamas authority, reported 14 deaths in Gaza City, 13 in Khan Yunis. Hospitals contacted by the AFP news agency confirmed the figures. Israel says the strikes were a response to Hamas militants opening fire on troops in what it called a violation of the ceasefire agreement. Hamas denies that claim, calling the attacks a dangerous escalation that puts the truce at risk. The violence comes as Israel launched new strikes on Hezbollah targets in Lebanon, despite a nearly year-long ceasefire there. Residents in Gaza described scenes of panic, destruction and fear as families who had just begun returning home were forced to flee again. The ceasefire, part of a US brokered deal linked to the next stage of President Donald Trump's peace plan, remains fragile. The conflict traces back to Hamas's October the 7th attack in 2023 that killed over 1,200 people, and Israel's ensuing offensive, which has resulted in more than 69,000 deaths in Gaza, according to the UN figures. Yossi Kapowasa joins us now. He's an Israeli intelligence and security expert. He joins us live from Tel Aviv. Yossi, thank you very much for joining us. What more can you tell us about this incident which led to these huge strikes over the past day? 27 people dead in 24 hours in the Gaza enclave, meaning that this ceasefire remains ever more fragile. What more can you tell us, Yossi?
What's happening is that Hamas does not respect the ceasefire ever since it began. They carried out several terror attacks against us, and almost on a daily basis we are faced with terrorists who are trying to cross from the areas under Hamas control into the areas under our control in the Gaza Strip where our soldiers are deployed. So we carried out an attack against the person that was in charge of all these terror attacks and in Gaza City and in Khan Yunis. And that's what has happened. We are trying to deliver a message to the Hamas people that they have to obey by the rules of this ceasefire. That's, I hope that message was well received.
The second phase of the ceasefire is coming up to be discussed. With ongoing events like these, do you see any hope for a transition to the first or the second phase?
Look, first of all, we have not finished the first phase. We are still waiting for 3 bodies of deceased hostages that are in the captivity of Hamas. We hope that this is going to be solved soon, but we cannot know if this is actually going to happen or not. They claim they don't know where they are, and we help them look for those bodies, including in the areas under our control, so far to no avail. And then comes the second phase, and in the second phase we see that there's a deadlock, because whereas the second phase starts with the disarmament of Hamas, Hamas refuses to disarm. And the international body that is supposed to take care of that, it has not been formed yet, and probably would not be formed before they know that Hamas is willing to disarm out of their own will. And we don't see any signs that this is going to be the case. So there's not going to be an international stabilization force that's supposed to take care of this challenge. And this would lead eventually to the question of whether Israel is going to take action in order to disarm Hamas by force or not, and to what extent we are going to get the green light from the United States to do that. Because otherwise the entire plan, beautiful plan that's supposed to bring peace to the Middle East, is not going to be implemented. And this is a pity for everybody, including the Palestinians and Israelis, and there are other people of the Middle East, and globally. So it's all about whether Hamas is going to be ready to disarm. There was supposed to be a meeting between the Palestinian leaders of Hamas, Khalil al-Khaya, and the envoy, the American envoy, Steve Witkoff. Yesterday in Istanbul, in the last moment, this was decided not to hold it. So it's hard to see how we move forward from here.
Yossi, do you realistically see Hamas laying down its arms and disarming willingly, given the fact that Israel conducts operations that kill 27 people in 24 hours, which you said is sending a message?
Yeah, well, that's, we didn't kill 27 people. We killed the commander of the Hamas battalion in Gaza City and his entourage. That's what we killed. It's not ordinary people. And I think this is going to be a message to them, but whether they're going to receive it or not, as I said, I'm not sure. It's, and the chances that they are going to disarm by their own will are, for the time being, low. And they refuse to do that, and we hope that mediators, especially Turkey and Qatar, who are very close to Hamas, and Egypt, who also has a leverage on Hamas, will be able to convince them to do that. Because this is what they promised the United States is going to be done. This entire plan is based on the willingness of Hamas to disarm that was expressed in front of the Americans, both directly and through the mediators. If they back off and they decide not to do that, then there's a big question mark of whether this plan is going to be implemented or whether Israel is going to be asked to do the job by itself. And as President Trump said when he presented the plan in the first place, that Israel would have to finish the job with the full American backing. We'll see if this is going to happen.
Disarming by force,
anyhow,
would that be...
Anyhow, I'd say anyhow, if we are not, even if we are not going to do that, the situation is going to be such that the rest of the elements that comprise the plan, including the reconstruction of Gaza, is not going to take place.
Disarming by force, would that mean a complete resumption of the war in the same conduct that was previously taking place on a daily basis prior to this October the 10th ceasefire?
This would mean that, the Gaza Strip is divided today between us and Hamas. And this would mean that we shall have to take over control over the areas governed by Hamas, and mainly the Gaza City, which we didn't do that in previous part of the war. And but this time we're going to do that. If we are going to do that, we're going to do that without having to worry about the fate of the hostages, because the living hostages have been released, and with full American backing. That's important, and with the understanding of the rest of the world that we gave a chance to for Hamas to disarm themselves and to allow the people of Gaza to enjoy the benefits of this plan. They refuse to do that, and if this is going to be the case, I guess the international community is going to understand why there is a need for military action in order to disarm Hamas.
Okay, Yossi Kapawasa, thank you very much for joining us here on NewsX World. It's always a pleasure to speak to you. We now move on, and the United Nations General Assembly has adopted a resolution reaffirming global support for the Olympic truce ahead of the 2026 Winter Games in Italy. The measure, passed by consensus, urges all member states to uphold the historic commitment to peace, dialogue and unity through sport. Ahead of the vote, Giovanni Malago, the president of the Milano Cortina 2026 Foundation, has called on nations to see the upcoming Games as a beacon of hope, an alternative to rivalry and division. International Olympic Committee President Kirsty Coventry has also addressed the Assembly, drawing on her personal journey from a young swimmer in Zimbabwe to an Olympic champion. She stressed that protecting athletes from political interference is essential to preserving the integrity of the Olympic movement. Coventry has warned that restricting athlete visas or blocking participation for political reasons threatens the core principles of the Games. Speaking to reporters after the resolution passed, she said the IOC remains committed to ensuring that competitors from all regions can come together in a peaceful manner to be able to compete. Let's take a listen in.
The power of sport is there to be able to really build bridges and to unite us. And this is what we believe in the Olympic movement. And so we are going to continue to ensure that we allow for athletes from every part of our world to come together in a peaceful manner to be able to compete.
Now we move on to North America, and Mexican authorities have announced the arrest of an alleged mastermind in the assassination of a popular opposition mayor, Carlos Manzo, a vocal critic of the government's security policies, whose murder has shocked the country and sparked mass protests. Manzo, the mayor of Uruapan in the major state of Michoacan, was shot and killed during a public Day of the Dead celebration on November the 1st while he was with his family. Manzo had repeatedly accused the federal government of failing to act against organised crime. Security Minister Omar Garcia Harfuch identified the detainee as Jorge Armando N., withholding his last name as in custom in Mexico. He said investigations linked to the man to a criminal group in Michoacan, which works for the powerful Jalisco New Generation cartel. Well, that's all that we have time for this hour. Keep watching NewsX World for more international updates.